What's up, everyone? It's Willette with Urbex and Coasters, and this morning I'm going to tell you a story. A man merged the top two brands in an industry. Some investors were hyped about what merging the top two brands in an industry could do, how much money both brands could bring in, and what everything could be with that. At the start of the merge process, the man decided he was going to strip assets from the company. He was doing this in the name of short-term profit, which raised the stock price to give the shareholders some temporary money that they could take the money and run with. Some assets were sold off, some were straight up scrapped. The man did not take into account what stripping assets like this did for the customer experience, so people stopped visiting his properties. It was at this point that the stock price began to plummet because everyone realized this man was running the company into the ground, stripping assets without care for what it does for the customer experience. The man had run the business into the ground so bad that the land value was more than the value of the business that was on the land. So he started closing locations so that he could sell the land and reap that land value for short-term profit. It eventually got to the point where there were only a couple locations left. Most people thought the company had ceased to exist entirely. People who follow me for exclusively urban exploring content probably think I'm talking about Eddy Lampert as the man here. People who follow me exclusively for roller coaster content probably think I'm giving some prophecy about what I think is going to happen with Six Flags with the merger, because I'm very much anti-Zimmerman Coaster Club. Link for those shirts down below, by the way. I do have an Etsy shop. I mean, most people who own stock look at Eddy Lampert and they would not want him as a CEO of a company that they own stock in. If you're thinking about investing in Six Flags, I'm warning you. Richard Zimmerman is the Eddy Lampert of the amusement industry. And it's not just the merger. Let's go back in time to the early 2000s. Richard Zimmerman is GM of King's Dominion. He decides to visit the S&S facility in Utah and buys a coaster right off of their testing lot that was designed for executives from parks to go test and not for any sort of long-term operation. It was designed for the purpose of, hey, we want people from parks to come test this, and eventually we want there to be enough of these out there that we don't need to have this here, because we can just fly the people from those parks out to see one that is designed to actually be for daily operation of a park. But Richard Zimmerman, being the impulsive idiot he is, decides to cheap out and buy the unit right off of the test lot. Hypersonic XLC. And to those who say, oh, he wasn't the boss at Paramount when he did this, it's not like the other Paramount parks got air launch coasters. This was a decision he made, because purchasing something off of a test lot, that's something that a GM might do. And what do you know? It predictably was completely unreliable. It lasted only 6 years. And does it sound familiar that, hey, Richard Zimmerman cheaps out on an edition, and as a result, it ends up being a colossal failure, one of the biggest failures in amusement history? Yes, I am getting at Top Thrill 2, from being closed its entire opening year to getting a crack on the spike support recently because Zamperla doesn't know what they're doing. But Richard Zimmerman went with them because they were cheap. Just like with Hypersonic, he went with the ride that was on the test lot because it was cheap. And the customer suffers because of his cheapness. Shall I also go in depth about how he cut off Rocky Mountain construction because of what was largely accidents that were not their fault and the result of guest behavior, like not securing phones or throwing hot sauce at a moving coaster train? The cutting off manufacturers for minor hiccups, that is a Cedar Fairism from before his time as CEO. The RMCs were built right before he took over, to be clear. But the cutting off RMC entirely, that was him that did that, largely because of those accidents, because those are the accidents that actually hurt people on those rides. But those accidents were not RMC's fault. Or shall I talk about the time that he poached a coaster off of a park to give it to a bigger park when that smaller park probably could have really benefited from it? And if you think I'm talking about Siren's Curse, well, it's just because I'm talking about the same person who did that to California's Great America when they were supposed to get Orion. Or shall I talk about the time that Richard Zimmerman poached a coaster off of a smaller park to give it to a bigger park that it does a lot less for the lineup of? And if you think I'm talking about Siren's Curse, well, it's because it's the same thing that happened with and Six Flags Mexico. It's because it's the same thing that happened with California's Great America and Orion. And as for California's Great America, Richard Zimmerman made the decision that he was going to close that park and sell off the land for a profit as soon as he took over as CEO. And here's why I say that. You had their 10-year plan, which included at the centerpiece what became Orion. And none of it happened because he canceled it because he wanted to close the park and sell the land. I genuinely believe Railblazer was a consolation prize because he knew that selling the land was probably going to involve some sort of lease, so it was something to tide the park over until it eventually closed. It was probably supposed to go to some small FEC or something, and they ended up canceling it, and RMC was like, hey, we're already giving you 2 coasters. We can give you a Raptor at a discount. And they had just canceled the 10-year plan at California's Great America, so they were able to petition for, hey, can we at least have that as a consolation prize? And then there's, of course, the time that he closed a beloved, absolutely beloved attraction that a lot of people had a lot of memories with, and didn't even give so much as a, hey, just so you know, this is your last chance to get rides on this, because we are going to be taking it out and putting something new in. And again, if you think it's because I'm talking about the merger here, it's just because it's the same tactic that was used with Montezuma's Revenge. And all for a lame old LSM coaster that just has a small spike on each side is what we get to replace a unique flywheel launch coaster, one of a kind in the US, with those Schwarzkopf shuttle loops. We lose a unique ride like that to get a lame old everyday LSM coaster. And said LSM coaster has been delayed for 2 years. It's probably going to be delayed until 3 years later than it was supposed to open for it to actually open. Because, I mean, they don't even have the thing fully built yet. There's no way they get that thing open by summer. So, do you really think that marketing isn't going to say, hey, we open it during Boysenberry Festival in 2026, because that's when it has the most marketability to the GP? Because that's what they're going to say. So, for anyone who is in any way optimistic about the future of Great Adventure, who got hit the hardest by far with the Great Coaster Purge of 2024, I'm just going to say, get ready. We've been experiencing Zimmerman's tactics in California for the past couple years now, and, you know, that is how he is. I am warning you. That's how he is, and that's what you're getting now with your King Dakar replacement that you're so optimistic is actually gonna happen, and you're so optimistic is could actually live up to anything. And I mean, that's ignoring the fact that it doesn't just have to live up to King Dakar, because this is a bigger issue than that. I mean, for me, like, King Dakar fell out of the top 3 in that park for me in 2021 with Jersey Devil. So, that park's top 3 has not changed since the Great Coaster Purge for me. But it doesn't just have to live up to King Dakar. It has to live up to King Dakar and be able to get you to forgive removing the world's tallest coaster without even making so much as an announcement and leaving it up to influencer rumors when said influencers are going to brag about having been right and known insiders that told them everything, rather than say, yeah, screw Six Flags for doing things this way, screw Richard Zimmerman. They're gonna call it goddamn transparent. That ride has to live up to the very human element of that. And also, it doesn't just have to replace King Dakar. They removed 8 rides from that fucking park. So it has to fill the hole of 8 rides that they removed, including a coaster, which, albeit Green Lantern was my personal least favorite coaster, but every ride is someone's number 1. The fans definitely deserved a heads up for, hey, get your last rides on this day. And then, of course, there's the closing parks, like what Zimmerman is doing to California's Great America and Six Flags America. California's Great America came before the merger, so that shows that what he's doing with Six Flags America, that's just who he fucking is. That's not an anomaly. That's not part of the merger. That's just who this man is. And that brings me back to the comparison with Lampert. So I'm gonna draw out a stock curve, like a curve like this. So there was a time after the Sears and Kmart merger where the stock was significantly high, and then when people started to realize Lampert was full of crap because he was selling off those assets and it was making the customer experience worse, it was making the brands of products worse, it slipped down off the charts. And I'm predicting right now, 10 years from now, you're going to have Cedar Point, Six Flags Magic Mountain, Knott's Berry Farm, and Carowinds as the last parks in the chain. Much like how there are only 5 Sears stores left, and a lot of people think that Sears doesn't exist anymore because of how badly Eddy Lampert has fucked up. So yeah, of course, fuck Eddy Lampert, fuck John Fisher, and fuck Richard Zimmerman, and I will see you guys in the next one.